Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, and welcome to tonight's Findlay City Council regular session on February 6, 2024. We will start this evening's meeting with a roll call, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Mr. Ballman?
Here.
Mr. Departmental?
Here.
Ms. Frishy?
Here.
Mr. Greeno?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Ms. Warnicki? And Mr. Wobser.
Present.
Ms. Warnicki contacted all of us this afternoon, said she's not feeling well and wouldn't be able to attend tonight. I will entertain a motion to excuse. Mr. Wobser.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Baumann. And any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. She is excused. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and followed by a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, we do. An add-on letter from Mayor Mern concerning the Immigrant Task Force. Move that be added to the reports of municipal officers and municipal departments section. Replacement for Resolution 008-2024, the no PO over to the PO legislation. Adding two line items, one for Wolpert Inc. for $3,000 and one for RS&H Ohio Incorporated for $138,580.42. Ordinance 2024-010 as amended, which is the State Route 6815 interchange renovation MOA. Section 3, we're changing the amount to $573,000 from $650,000. Thank you. Ordinance 2024-019, which is the runway 725 rehabilitation project. In essence, we are changing the word taxiway to runway wherever it appears in that legislation, and moving that those those one resolution and the two ordinances be amended as stated, and also removal from the agenda of the anonymous letter postmarked January 12th, and remove that from the written communications.
That was in the form of a motion. Second, Mr. Departmental. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The changes are made.
John?
Go ahead, Mr. Russell.
Just for the record, the removal of the anonymous letter is because it does not meet council's rules. It was a letter that did not have addresses of the people who sent it, and so we don't know where they live or if they even live in the city of Findlay. That was the reason for that removal.
Duly noted. We have no proclamations. We have no recognitions or retirement resolutions. We do have a petition.
A zoning amendment request for 116 Laquinio Street from Executive Director Christy Montgomery on behalf of Women's Resource Center of Hancock County. They'd like to change the zoning from R3 small lot residential to O1 offices and institutions.
Questions or comments? This will be referred to City Planning Commission and P&Z Committee. Oral communications, we have one for Haiti Sadler. And she would like to speak on the housing of illegal immigrants.
My name is Haiti Sadler, and as you all know, I ran for City of Findlay Mayor last year for concerns with our citizens and the voices of the residents here in the City of Findlay. Council members, I stand up here from time to time to share information about the dangers of the direction you and Mayor Murren are leading our city and the concerns of the residents of the City of Findlay. Yet in all my speaking and in all my questions, council has yet to address one of my questions with an answer. Today, again, I have information to share with you and a question to ask in hopes that you will take time to answer not just me, but our community. When the residents of the city of Findlay raise concerns about illegal immigrants crowding the edges of our city, they're not asking how we plan to support them. They're asking because they are concerned for the safety of their families. They're concerned about them being legal, them using our nonprofits to support them, which are also being used as NGOs to assist in their invasion. And they're concerned about them being vetted and also voting in our elections. In November of last year, Mary Murin wrote an op-ed for the Courier stating she hadn't addressed illegal immigrants prior to that because she didn't want to single out a certain group of people that doesn't look like us. A few weeks later, at December's Fresh Brewed Business, she announced that Findlay will be a hub for these people she calls legal persons, even though Chief Matthias admittedly said at the budget hearing that the Mexican population doesn't have papers and he didn't understand why. At the city council later that same week, she then makes herself the head chef in the kitchen for managing the influx of immigrants. This is not what the people want. It's my understanding that the Inflation Reduction Act advances the Justice 40 initiative. The Justice 40 initiative is giving 40% of overall benefits to disadvantaged communities, which are defined as ethnic minorities. They include immigrants, migrants, refugees, and displaced persons. According to the Justice 40 Tracks map of May 2022, Findlay has been pegged as a disadvantaged community, which will also allow for affordable, sustainable housing for these groups of people. Not only that, the border security bill serves as a mass amnesty bill to allow for illegals to vote. Before Mary Murin takes liberties that are not bestowed on her, she should be representing we, the people, not them, the globalists. I ask that the declaring an emergency verbiage be removed from any legislation, whether it be through resolutions or ordinances that involve any integration into our community or housing, so that the residents of Findlay can have a voice as to whether or not they support Mayor Murin's socialist agenda. This matter needs to be voted on. So my question is this: is the city of Findlay intending on pushing this globalist agenda of socialism by taking our tax dollars to build homes for illegal immigrants that have been invited to our city without voters' approval?
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Mrs. Sadler.
Okay, then.
Just so you know that per city council rules, that even though questions directly to city council do not have to be answered, if you have specific questions for council themselves or a specific council member, you're more than welcome to ask them directly, but it's not the forum to ask it tonight. So just want you to know. All right, thank you. Okay, written communications.
Letter from Ohio Municipal League, Enhanced Advocacy Opportunities.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
Email from supplemental information attached. Email with supplemental information attached from HHWP Community Action Commission Transportation Director Jamie Baker regarding Hancock County Transit Development Plan.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
An email with letter attached from Haiti Sadler regarding illegal immigrants.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Reports of municipal officers and departments.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding revolving loan fund board appointment. This does require council's confirmation.
Mr. Palmer.
Move to approve Ms. Keller for a position to the revolving loan fund board.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of her appointment say aye. Any opposed, nay? She is appointed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding appointment to Parks and Recreation Board. This does not require council confirmation.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
Treasurer's Reconciliation Report for December 31st, 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Financial summary reports for December, as of December 31st, 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Police Chief Matthias regarding seized drug investigation funds.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
Mr. Martin, will this piece of equipment then be available to specifically Hancock County sheriffs and or other surrounding departments, obviously, or like Macomb or outside of the county, that this then do we become a center for this type of thing?
The details have not been specifically worked out on who all outside of the city of Findlay would be using this, but we collaborate throughout the county and the region on a lot of things. Up to this point, we've relied on other communities that had these resources for us to use. So again, the chief and I haven't worked out that detail, but based on the capacity and the capability of it, I think that's something we would definitely work with.
And this would be physically located where?
Again, I haven't worked out that detail of the location, but somewhere on a property of the city. It's a smoke-free, EPA-friendly, or EPA-approved smoke-free device that burns this at a very high temperature that cooks it down, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Greeno.
Not knowing all of the details, but I'm assuming that the prescription drugs that we now currently collect would be also incinerated through this, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it, not only do the drugs get burned down, but it sterilizes needles and things. It melts things down where it could actually been, those things that were considered dirty are sterilized to the point where they could actually be safely put into refuge. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Hellman.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Martin, I had a similar questions.
Turn your mic on, please. Oh, or put it,
My red light's on.
there you go. Boy, you have it.
Is that any better?
There you go.
How's that?
Much better.
I'm gonna swallow this thing. Is there, when you utilize these services, is there a charge for that? No, it's just done gratis. Got it.
The logistics to go, though, is time-consuming and takes people away from the city. So want to keep it local with this opportunity.
Mr.
Thank you.
Wobser.
Will we have any additional costs beyond the 6,036 on here? I mean, if we buy this thing, then we're gonna have to find a place to put it, et cetera, et cetera. Do we think we're gonna have an additional cost to get this implemented?
So it's a good question. It's the size of essentially a 55-gallon drum. It's not a large.
I didn't think it was very large.
Yeah, it's not. So we have the space that we can actually store this. Again, the details of where have not been worked out at this point, so.
Okay.
Mr. Russell.
And then is there a liability or an insurance side of this thing that we have to be aware of, that the fact that we're now providing that service? Or is,
I understand the question about insurance, but I didn't understand. Can you ask that again or in a different
are
way?
you contacting our insurance companies to say we now have this piece of equipment and we are going to be performing this, in essence, service? I'll leave it at that.
It's a valid thing to close that loop. I will make that contact to make sure it's covered.
Mr. Greeno.
Currently, we were taking all of the drugs, I believe, to Detroit or Michigan area
Michigan
and
area,
stuff like
correct.
that. So this will save on that transportation and with the officers and stuff like that, correct?
Vehicle wear and tear, mileage,
Okay.
taking two people off, out of the city.
Yeah.
So logistically, it's a savings, yes.
Okay.
Ms. Mayer.
And I was just going to add that we also typically have to accumulate a certain amount before we can destroy it. So we have to utilize a lot of space to store the materials as well when we go up there, and then they sometimes cancel it or move it because they don't have personnel, the other location. And it's my understanding that a lot of those sites are actually stopping that service. So I think this will be good to have on. And just on the insurance point as well, we do regularly update them on any equipment we have, but we'll definitely make sure not only the coverage for us using it, but if we do determine that we're going to allow other entities to use it, that there's proper process and insurance around that.
Mr. Russell.
And my concern is the EPA giveth, the EPA taketh away, that it's approved today but might not be approved tomorrow, and then it's probably more, the concern is more because I don't know the details, but that's the kind of the basis for the concerns and the questions.
Other questions or comments? Letter be filed.
A letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding insurance payment for repairs of a police department vehicle from an accident.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
City Planning Commission agenda of February 8th, 2024.
Questions or comments? Agenda be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding local opioid settlement funds.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding appointment to Airport Advisory Board. This does require council confirmation. Does not, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, it does not need council's confirmation. Are there any questions or comments? Letter be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Ohio Department of Transportation fiscal year 24, Han Bigelow Avenue, PID 117611, project number 328333800.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
Letter from City Engineer regarding Han Greenway Trail Phase 2, PID 109009, project number 319933800.
Questions or comments? Mr. Palmer.
Hey, Jeremy, what details need cleaned up on this to wrap up with the 50,000?
So with the time that we finally got the bridge to come in and all that kind of stuff, because that was back order, or we were supposed to get it in April, didn't get it, or excuse me, August, did not get it until October. We put down kind of a temporary seeding type scenario down through there just to get grass growing, so that way we didn't have erosion problems over the winter. So we have to go back through and address any areas that are needing final seeding down through there, which we will reimburse the contractor for that, for final seeding, just because we had the temporary seeding going through there. And then there was a couple areas that we identified with the rain that we have gotten in the past couple weeks, and not being able to drain. We're figuring out if there's any drainage problems that are needing immediately addressed, or if it was just because of the environment we were in at this time. So those are kind of the main portions right now. And then we also will go through and do a final check through of everything, make sure all items are completed and we're satisfied before it's finally turned over to the city.
Other questions or comments? Letter be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding runway 725, NAV AID rehab, project number 3523450, ODOT Aviation Grant funds.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Kalb. This is the one we changed taxiway to runway 725 rehabilitation AIP 34, project number 3523420, ODOT Aviation Grant funds.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed as corrected.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding Downtown Design Review Board. This one does require council confirmation.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the two folks appointed, or that we approve the two appointments to the Downtown Design Review
Second.
Board.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of appointing Jordan Taylor and Meredith Worth, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? They are appointed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding ordinance number 2024-10.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Blanchard Street Waterline Phase 2, OPWC, project number 357400500.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding authorization to sell parcel number 570000921770 at a public auction. That's for 515 Prospect Street.
Questions or comments? Ms. Frishy.
Rob, this property, I doesn't even enter my mind ever, but how did we come up with the dollar amount that we came up with of 10,000? And then, you know, are we sure I don't know if the structure is even, if there's not even a structure there anymore. So it's just land.
Correct.
So how did we come up with that dollar amount with the price of housing right now and how well things are selling?
Mr. Martin?
So there was an appraisal done, but it was done when the structure was still on it. So we're going off of what the land value is on the auditor's website. The best gauge that we have at this point. The structure was inhabitable and it was knocked down and it's a grass structure or grass lot in a residential area at this point. So that's, I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna be worth what somebody's gonna pay for it at auction.
Would it be smart to maybe talk with some realtors and get some input on that, just to make sure we're getting the full amount of revenue that we should be out of it if we sell it?
Well,
I know it's auction, but if nobody shows up to the auction, it's gonna be a nice cheap sale. That's all I'm saying.
Go ahead, Rob. Oh,
So
Ms.
I just
okay,
feel
I
like,
didn't know if you were gonna. No, well, yeah, I mean, we have comps in the neighborhood that we can compare and then we can have those conversations with other realtors to see if there's a difference where they would change that based on it being just a grass lot. But just wanted to start the process with you all to understand this was an acceptable process to move forward with.
Mr. Sashek?
I guess that goes to a couple questions I have with regard to the auction. Do we know who's going to auction it? Are you going to sell it as an absolute auction, or are you going to set a minimum bid so that council's aware? You can set a minimum so that it doesn't go cheap. And my third question would be, is it buildable? Because that has a significant impact on the value of this lot given its location.
Ms. Mayor?
It's a special regulation we put in place. Yeah, so we'll, again, work through that. So yes, we would recommend at least the $10,000 minimum. We have looked at other parcels. It is a small lot. However, it is buildable. There was a previous structure on it, so it could be residential property.
Mr. Station?
I guess I would follow that up then, since it is buildable, it probably would be worthwhile to have a proper appraisal, because you've got a number of builders in the community, and so that council knows, you may not be aware, I'm actually a licensed auctioneer, actively licensed, not actively practicing, but with that, this is the type of parcel that will draw interest from the one-off builders that like to only do 1, 2, or 3 custom homes or build their homes. I'm not sure about the zoning on the lot. If you could do a duplex, triplex, or just single family, those types of things. There's a lot of questions that should be answered. You may want to consider, I guess I would recommend to the administration that maybe prior to committing to the auction, that council's given an opportunity through a committee meeting to understand those things, because the difference between $10,000, I think the last lot I looked at that was smaller, it went for darn near 40 grand. This town has significant value in its resources and in its availability, because that's inside town. So you probably want to go carefully here, and that would be my suggestion to the administration as well.
Mr. Niemeyer?
I'm sure we could add a couple other properties and have more than one property at the auction.
Which ones are you suggesting specific properties be added?
Not yet.
Ms. Frischie?
most of the council members were here under Mayor Mahalik. We had some discussion about the property on Main Cross that was potentially going for sale, and at that point, council kind of wanted to have a list of all properties and go through things. So I would also be curious of how we came about to address this property suddenly. I'll use the word suddenly.
Ms. Mayor?
Yeah, so a couple of things. As you will note, in the actual legislation, it does not specify a dollar amount. As you guys know, you like us to bring something to you, then to have the conversation. So that is why we have this letter to start the process. We're happy to have a meeting to evaluate appraised value, what we want to put it if there's any restrictions that we want to put on it before we sell it. The reason this property specifically is being addressed and that we've brought it to council at this point in time is it's a random lot that we're currently maintaining in a residential neighborhood that serves no purpose to us. And therefore, we want to get it off of our plate before it's time for our crew to have to go mow it on a regular basis. And so that is why it's being brought forward. We do want to look at all of our other properties and what makes sense moving forward with those, but we didn't want this one to be held up in that larger picture process.
Ms. Frishy?
So I would just like to request if anybody, I know it sounds like Mr. Niemeyer is interested in other lots, I don't know, but I would like to do an updated full review of all of our properties, of where they're at and our needs and what we don't need, and then wondering, I don't know, do we get a better deal if we do more than one property auction or not? I don't know that either, that maybe it's worth if Mr. Niemeyer has. So I would like to have this go to a committee or that we fully look at all properties. If anybody would second that.
So will you put that in a written request, because what you're asking for, Ms. Frishy, can be very comprehensive and it can be very vague. The amount of properties that the city owns is one thing. If you're looking for their current use, future use, or potential would be another. And so I think you need to be more specific in your request.
Well,
And what committee are you proposing that this goes to?
well, I would say it should go to appropriations, and I would say we should review all of our properties that are not in use or properties that we are considering eliminating from our list of properties in the city. So I don't think I'm vague, and I don't know what Mr. Niemeyer was looking at or considering, but I just think we should review them. I don't know all the properties. I'd like to know them as a council person.
Ms. Mayor?
So if you'd like to look at all of the City of Findlay owned parcels, you can go on the county auditor site and do City of Findlay. And I only say that because it is very extensive. There is a variety, and I would agree, I need a little more clarification on your wanting to talk about all City of Findlay properties. That is a much different conversation than if you're wanting to talk about properties that we may be interested in divesting of in the near future. But again, the reason we're bringing this one up is because we're not prepared to have that conversation yet, because there's lots of different things, and I don't want my team to have to go waste their time to mow one lot in a residential neighborhood.
Mr. Wobser?
I think what we got to do here to get this moving along, if Councilwoman Frishy would amend her motion to include just this property, the prospect, and refer that to Appropriations Committee, I would second that motion, if she would amend. I withdraw my second.
Ms. Frishy?
So I agree that property needs to go, but I think it is smart for appropriations to look at all properties. We know we have the property on Main Cross that we addressed back in 15-16, and that we have emptied it over into the bus garage that we're not paying rent for. So there's that property sitting empty. And then I don't know what other properties. So I don't know why I have to look for a needle in a haystack on this discussion. I think it would be smart for us to have a review. We haven't had it in a few years. I don't think I need to go to the auditor's page and look at a list of our properties. I would assume if the administration is looking at one property that they don't want to mow for 2024, there might be other properties that maybe it's not mowing, but maybe we don't want to continue to maintain them.
Mr. Wobser?
I'd make a motion that the potential sale of the prospect, was it 515 prospect, be referred to Appropriations Committee.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Mr. Wobser's request, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That issue will be brought before the Appropriations Committee.
Findlay Fire Department Activities Report for January 2024.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding key performance indicators for 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City income tax monthly collections report for January 2024.
Questions or comments? Mr. Station.
Just quickly, again, I'll point you to the withholders line there. As you see, it's down $100,000. Not a huge amount, but it is of note. $100,000 is $100,000. Let's keep an eye on that as this year progresses.
Other questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding flood mitigation update and FEMA hazard mitigation grant.
Questions or comments? Mr. DeArmond.
I was interested in this Norfolk Southern. So have they agreed to pay the differential?
Ms. Mayor?
At this time, they have informed us they will not be giving any capital contribution this year, but will reconsider it next year.
Next year.
Correct.
Does that fit in with our timeline?
So that it would be covered as part of this grant would be the entire remaining amount. So the FEMA hazard mitigation grant that would be applying for would cover the cost difference in each of the 3 remaining projects. And therefore, that would no longer be a determining factor in moving forward. And I would note, it really, we would obviously love their support. It's their infrastructure, and I stand by the fact that they should be providing capital support, but we're not going to allow that to stop the project because it's a critical piece.
And then are permits in place for the bridge and the?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. So yes, this has been a long project with lots of permitting. So all the necessary permitting processes are either started or already complete. And really at this point, we're pretty much ready to begin the bid process.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with applying for this grant, they have told us that we cannot bid out the projects or move forward with any construction until we hear back on the grant. Any work that would be performed on the bid or the construction itself would not be reimbursable, so it would potentially negate us being able to utilize the grant. So what this is being able to move forward to apply. Again, the city is not making any statements of financial support towards the project. We would not be entering into any formal agreement. So when I discussed it with Deputy Auditor Sampson, she said, though, because it is a federal grant, they want to have a resolution from your body stating that you're in support of the grant application. Typically, because if it was a state program or something, since we weren't really entering into anything or agreeing to anything, we wouldn't necessarily need it. But I also think it's important to continue to, show support for flood mitigation. We're making really good progress, and I know the Conservancy District, as well as the commissioners and the city of Findlay, are all dedicated to getting these projects done. And regardless of, this is important and would be really helpful, but we'll get it done one way or the other.
Thank you.
Ms. Frishy.
Mayor, we had talked, I think we talked about $2.5 million or $5 million of city dollars potentially having to use. Will this eliminate that, and that'll free us back up once we know this grant goes through?
Ms. Mayor.
So I think there might be some little things, right, like the road work, some of those different things that we would still pull out of those funds over the next year or so. But yes, in essence, this would negate the need for those funds.
Just a quick note, in the letter, it does say that the grant application is due February 22nd, so please consider that when it comes up. Mr. Russell.
Mayor, is Norfolk and Southern supportive of the project, just not willing to support it financially in 2024?
That is correct, yes. So they have been involved in the design process and have signed off on all of the designs. They have also been a part of all the conversations, and I would note that we are in discussions with them still to see if they have to have inspectors on site throughout the project, and we have requested that they at least cover their soft costs, so they would cover the cost of those folks being on site.
Other questions and comments? Letter be filed.
Findlay Police Department activities report for January 2024.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding Immigrant Task Force. This is the add-on letter.
Mr. Russell.
Mayor, I will admit, in the time that I got this letter, I didn't get a chance to get through the entire thing. short of asking Denise to read it and making a motion to that, do you want to just make some comments about the letter? Or are there highlight points you want made, or just let it stand on its own?
I think, though I feel bad to have Denise read it, I think it would be beneficial to have it read into the record, and would request a motion that is what occurs.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the letter be read into the record.
Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of having the letter read into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
The letter will be read, and be patient. It's a nice, long letter, and pay attention. It does.
All right, I have
Mayor's gonna do it for me.
volunteered that I will read it, so you guys get the full, it'll be like a audio book. Now, do I need my glasses or not? Okay. Dear Honorable Council, as you are aware, over the past year, the City of Findlay has seen an increase in immigrants coming to our community. My understanding is that these individuals are coming here for a variety of reasons. Some have had ties or knew of our region because of past agricultural work. Some are here with staffing agencies or work visas. Some have found our community as they looked for a safe community with good jobs, and others are here because they were able to find housing and are working in surrounding communities, Upper Sandusky, Bowling Green, Cary, etc. I know this is a topic that is being brought up frequently, and I wanted to provide a couple of points of clarification as well as an update on how we as a community are trying to wrap our arms around this new challenge. First, I want to clarify that the City of Findlay is in no way bringing these immigrants here. They are not being bused here by Biden, the city is not paying for them, and we are not a sanctuary city. As I have shared in the past, if the city interacts with an individual who cannot provide proper paperwork and we can confirm its existence with proper authorities, we notify ICE. If we believe the individual is a threat to the public, we would detain them until ICE arrives. Fortunately, to my knowledge, we have not had any such situation. My goal is that the City of Findlay is a welcoming place without inviting large populations that may cause challenges to our community. Second, there are multiple types of immigrants currently in our community. Some are here on work visas, some are at a state in the immigration process in which they cannot work, and there is a population that is in the immigration process and is not able to work. I guess that's a duplicated statement. This is, in my opinion, a large flaw in the immigration system. Unless the immigrant is here on certain types of visas, they are unable to work for the first year they are here. Yes, there are some individuals that are here illegally, and if law enforcement interacts with them, we notify the proper authorities. As a municipality, there are limited steps beyond that we can take. I believe it is worth noting here that the majority of our immigrant population is here legally. I also believe that significant federal reform on border security and immigration is needed, and that we can both advocate for those improvements while treating individuals in our community with dignity and respect. Third, there are at best guess between 300 and 500 individuals that are in our community, either living, working, or both. This may fluctuate and may grow over the next few years, but this is not a goal of mine, as been inaccurately stated. This brings me to the Immigration Task Force. As I shared a few weeks ago, the City of Findlay recognizes the challenges of seeing a larger immigrant population, and though it is not one we created, it is one we must address. Yesterday, I hosted the first official meeting of the Immigrant Task Force. This is a group of approximately 60 individuals or agencies who interact with the immigrant population regularly. Below is an outline of what I shared and what we discussed at the meeting. These reports will be provided to you on a regular basis moving forward. Community priorities. The City of Findlay wants to continue to be a safe community that provides opportunities for a better life and treats everyone with dignity and respect. 2, recognize that the majority of challenges faced by our immigrant population are the same challenges faced by many others in our community, and that by improving these systems, we are helping our community as a whole. The third bullet point, ensure managed use of resources to meet the needs of local residents while also supporting the increased demand from the immigrant population to ensure there is not a ripple effect of issues due to homelessness, inadequate health care, or food insecurity. Prior to hosting yesterday's meeting, Jacqueline and I met with our established coalition leaders to understand what each of their coalitions was seeing. Out of these conversations, we identified the following primary areas for discussion at our Immigration Task Force: language, culture, housing, transportation, and food security. Below are a few initial notes of each topic. Language. Continue to provide ESL classes. Expand locations through volunteers to help increase capacity. Nonprofits can utilize Canva for free to translate documents. Identify a few resources that can review the translations for accuracy. Third bullet point, identify local translators who can get certified rather than utilizing pricey teletranslation services. Under culture, educate the population that nonprofit services are not for everyday use, but for use when in need. Second bullet point, educate on laws around domestic relations. 3, educate on health screening. 4, educate on the necessity of consistently using one legal identification. And then 5th bullet under culture, determine most appropriate ways that immigrants and community members can support each other in understanding and engagement. Next, housing, lack of available housing at affordable price points. Concerns by landlords due to no credit history, lack of access to a background check. 3, educate on restrictions with the number of individuals or families living as single-family residents. Next, transportation. Coordinate with the state and DMV to get the driver's manuals translated into other languages. Next bullet point, investigate fixed routes from denser population points to employment areas. Food security. Educate the population that nonprofit services, again, are not for everyday use, but for use when in need. Second point, identify if there are specific foods that are desired more due to cultural differences. Identify distributions and communication to ensure food is getting where it is needed. We have asked each agency to identify what is working in their process, what issues they're seeing, solutions that could be offered, and what long-term success looks like. The administration is serving as the convener and facilitator of these conversations to ensure that the collective action items move forward. Out of the initial discussion, below are some action items that were presented by the groups. Language. Create cards for people to have in their offices or to carry that include various common phrases. Create a resource summary document on the different language applications and translation services. Create an informal translators list, individuals qualified to help in situations that do not require certified translators. And create a formal translators list of certified translators. Under culture, focus on community-based education regarding the immigration process and understanding of cultural differences. Provide support to cultural connections, borderless connections, Black Heritage Library, Multicultural Center, and Arts and Heritage Council. Promote events and activities that celebrate cultures. Reinforce the importance of separating the national immigration reform challenges from what the needs of our local community are. Housing. Encourage landlords to work with employers to get background check information. Educate the immigrants on housing culture and regulations. Translate leases so that immigrants are aware of what they are signing. Transportation. Explore the possibility of fixed routes for better access to work, medical appointments, etc. Explore ways to begin providing transportation for second and third shift employees. Food security. Plan a resource fair similar to the No Wrong Doors events with translators present so individuals are able to learn about the community and resources available to them in one place. Create a translated pamphlet of the community information that can be provided by employers to individuals. I understand that this is a topic with varying opinions and many levels of complexity, but I believe I believe that if we ground ourselves in the following, we will be able to address the challenges in a manner in which we can all be proud. 1, treat humans as humans. 2, look for efficiencies in our existing system. 3, engage the local community of volunteers. 4, advocate for immigration reform at the federal level. Thank you for your understanding and support as we address this challenge. Sincerely, Mayor Christina Byrne.
Mr. Webster.
Mayor, thank you for that update. I think it addresses a lot of topics that are on the minds of a lot of citizens and hopefully helps correct some of the misinformation that's been floating around town. One question that I've got, did the group look at or discuss at all the process of assimilation of these people into our community, into our country?
Mayor?
Yeah, so yesterday was our first meeting where we were really able to break up and we went into the different groups. So the action items that came out, each committee kind of broke up and discussed culture, housing, transportation, and these were some of the initial things they came back with. So I think a big part of it is, when folks are coming here, regardless of how they got here, and again, we're not bringing them here. There's not 1,500 of them. We don't have a plan to bring 5,000 of them in. That's all inaccurate information. What we do want is when folks are here and they want to make a better life for themselves, how do we make sure that they are integrated and being able to be productive members of society? And so right now what we're seeing is, for example, a large portion of the folks that are living in the hotels are working and have money to rent a house on their own, but can't find something, or they can't get the background check because landlords don't have access to the systems that would be necessary. So that's where a lot of these came out from. Obviously, language is the largest barrier, and I think if we can work on that and help folks get access to language classes, like through the library who's providing it, as a service and partnering people up with volunteers, I think that will help solve a lot of the challenges that we're facing. But yes, if folks are going to be here long term, then they need to be a part of our community in a more,
Mr. Wobser.
ingrained way.
Yeah, I guess, I think back to some of the problems that we've seen in other communities across the country that were recipients of large immigrant populations, and a lot of the problems that seem to have stemmed out of those are because they never were assimilated into our country, and there's a lack of communication, a lack of understanding of how our country works and why we are the way we are. And I think understand that these folks, I don't know if their goal ultimately is to become citizens, and I understand that the path to citizenship is a long and arduous and potentially expensive process. So maybe that's not ultimately where they're going. And I suspect that we don't require any type of assimilation classes or things that have to be done for folks who are not pursuing citizenship. But we certainly see a big difference from the folks who do pursue citizenship and go through that process, and certainly come out with an appreciation for our country and for the things that we hold dear in our country versus some that do not. And I guess, if these folks are going to be here long term and we have any say in the matter in the front end of this process, I would ask that be something that's discussed with this group and how we ultimately educate these folks on the benefits of being in our country.
Mayor.
If I may, just one other comment since we're on this topic. I think it's important to note here that we are not seeing huge issues with crime in this population. The issues that we have seen are primarily traffic violations. We have seen a couple of situations of domestic violence. Again, a lot of that goes back to educating on how we treat people in this country. But luckily, we haven't had anything real severe. And this has nothing to do with the CQE program grant that we received from Bank of America. I know that there was recently, I've received a number of questions about that. The CQE program is only available to citizens. It is again, employers and the court making a determination on that. And that is not a government grant. It's actually from Bank of America. And each of the communities that applied proposed their own program to help with economic mobility. So each of the programs that were done by the other communities are completely different than what we applied for.
Mr. Departmental.
And just to take that further, it has nothing to do with immigration, the CQE. It's about reforming criminals and getting them employed. Right?
Correct.
I mean, so there's a lot of misinformation that it's tied to immigration, and it's not. So.
Correct. No ties to immigration, and the CQE is literally individuals who have already served, but they can't get their record expunged, and they have something on their record that currently may be preventing them from working. The courts evaluate the case and determine if it is appropriate based off of their crime and what they're looking to do to say, yes, they are a qualified individual to serve in that capacity. It helps remove some of the liability from the employers from hiring that individual.
Thank you.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Last week I heard we were one of the handful of cities that did receive a grant for this rigmarole that's going on right now.
Well,
Mayor.
Yeah, so the grant that we received was for the CQE program. Again, has nothing to do with immigration. The city of Findlay is not receiving any state, federal, private entity group funding for bringing immigrants here. That's not at all happening. The CQE program is what the city of Findlay, Bank of America offered and made known through the U.S. Conference of Mayors, of which I am a member, this economic mobility grant that says, hey, we want to help people improve their lives and put them in a better position to have economic mobility. And they opened up and I'll send you all, I know it's been requested, and I haven't had an opportunity to send it, the grant application. It was like, I don't know, maybe 10 questions. And pretty much they were open-ended, and they said, how do you want to use these funds? And the city of Findlay talked to a couple of our nonprofit agencies and said, if we had $10,000, how would you put it to good use in our community to help with this? And so we applied. And yes, there were a number of other communities that applied. I don't know the specific number that applied, but 7 different communities were selected. And again, each of them submitted their own problem or a program. And so I forget exactly what problems they were trying to solve through that. I think some of them did community gardens. I think some of them did like child financial education. So they're all different. So the program we implemented, it is no way tied to any other community. I think that's important to note.
Ms. Frishy?
I think it's important to note, I think it's good that the Immigration Task Force is trying to address some of the concerns that are coming into the community. I will also say the same things that are going on with food security, transportation, housing are not only for our influx in population that we're seeing. And although we think we only have 300 to 500 immigrants coming in at this time, the big focus on all this and the challenges we are facing, there's gonna be more. So that number, we can say whatever it's going to be, will be when we start seeing it. There are concerns, there are domestic concerns, there are petty theft, there are housing issues. With all of that being said, although you want to say they're coming here organically, I will note that we have an economic development program where we are encouraging this influx in population into our community that we are not prepared to handle. Whether they're speaking our language or not, we're not prepared for the influx throughout all of Hancock County. And the CQE grant for $10,000, great. There's a grant out there from the League of Mayors through Bank of America. But for me and most of the citizens that I talk to, those aren't maybe the same values that we're looking for. And if somebody has something on their record and they want to do better, they are more than welcome to file in the courts and pay their $150 and see what the judge says without us promoting this kind of program in a Republican community that we are.
Mayor?
Do you not believe that a Republican principle is helping people improve their lives and standing on their own 2 feet? No, you just said that that wasn't a Republican principle and that you didn't agree.
Don't manipulate my words.
Okay, you don't have to answer the question then.
No, I'd be glad to answer your question. So let's just be very clear. We have people in our community that need to work and want to work. When we are implementing a program through economic development that is bringing people into our community that have barriers and challenges, and we are paying them a lesser wage than what we would pay our employees that are here, then we have a problem. Because when our people that have had Findlay, Hancock County their home for generations, for years, became 18 years of age and are looking for a job, they're gonna want to have the $20 an hour job, okay? And when I talk about the CQE, personally, I don't think we should be looking at promoting people with felonies into our workforce. It sounds like we don't have people to work and we are just grasping at straws of whatever we can get. So no, that is not a Republican principle.
Mr. Wobser, let's move on. Let's make our comments to the letter that was read. Thank you. Mr. Wobser was first. Oh, he says no. Mayor?
I was just going to provide a point of clarification that I believe what you are referencing is First Diversity Staffing Company, which is is working with some of the migrant workers. And yes, companies have said, hey, we want to bring in these workers because they're helping benefit our business. But I would state that, to my knowledge, many of the folks that are here on work visas or are working through the staffing agency are filling jobs that they haven't been able to fill and are making good wages. And right now, some of them are paying $2,000 a month to live in a hotel. I'm pretty sure that that is Those are good paying jobs. And if somebody wants to, in our community qualifies and wants to get a job, they can do that. It would be a very different conversation if we were in a recession and there weren't job opportunities. But in my opinion, I think that these are providing benefit both to the individuals, our community as a whole, and the businesses.
Mr. Wilson.
The one thing I would add to this conversation is that this morning at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, they discussed the fact that our unemployment rate in Hancock County is 2.4%. 2.4% is exceptionally low. It's about 2.5% below norm, which means essentially everybody that's able to work in this county is working one way or another.
Ms. Frishy.
And then I would just note that when we are trying to grow economic development and bring in jobs that we can't fill because we don't have the population, it's causing us to use other programs.
Mr. Stashak, then let's move on.
One last comment regarding that 2.4%. I've tried very hard in the mid-year reviews when I talk to you folks to stress to you that that's regarding the people who are willing to work and aren't sitting at home collecting or unable or whatever. When you look at the difference between our peak employment in the 1990s of our local population and today, and you run the numbers proportionally, it says that if you incentivize properly, there's 2,500 to 3,000 people that are sitting out of the workforce today that weren't sitting out of the workforce in 1998, 1999. But we really don't know what that number is because the government has spent a lot of money to encourage people to sit at home. And to that point, I want to make sure that you all think and realize you have an impact based on driving economic development to the type of jobs that benefit our community the best. Please keep that in mind. And I think the point that we need to consider that we don't want to dilute our employment base with jobs that aren't paying a living wage is worth considering because we see it happen. Thank you.
Committee reports. I'm sorry, we have no committee reports. Legislation. Start with resolutions.
Third reading for Resolution 2, 2024. A resolution requesting the county auditor to make tax advances during the year 2024 pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 321.34.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of resolution number 002-2024.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution 002, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted.
Second reading for Resolution 5, 2024. A resolution transferring funds within appropriated funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Mayor or Rob is seeing as though we're into our tax season. Is this something that we're ready to progress with the hiring process if this were to be passed tonight?
Mayor.
Yes, and if you could, that would be lovely, please. Again, this is already within their budget. It was planned. We're just moving it from one line item to the other.
Mr. Russell.
For those reasons, I'd move that council statutory rules be suspended and resolution 005-2024 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman? Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this resolution its third reading.
Resolution 5, 2024.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of resolution 005-2024.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman? Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
Second reading for Resolution 7, 2024. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Hancock County, state of Ohio, to execute an agreement with Findlay Hope House for the Homeless Incorporated to provide fair housing services for residents of the city of Findlay, retroactive to January 1st, 2024.
Okay, next.
First reading for Resolution 8, 2024. A resolution approving the expenditures made by the auditor's office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Greeno.
Yeah, move for adoption of resolution number 008-2024. As amended, yes.
It's not technically amended, it was replaced.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Frishy.
I'm just looking for clarification on all of our items. So we have the Rooney Ranzow, for annexation. Which property was that we did the 5,017 for? I think the WPC is normal, if I'm not mistaken, if somebody can correct me on that. But there was a utility services, utility billing PO closed. What was that PO? Then we have an outside law firm for $15,000 with no purchase order. It doesn't say what case. And then Woolperth for the runway, and RS&H Ohio for runway as well. Just some clarification on all of them.
Mr. Martin?
So first of all, the Rooney, the first one for 5,000 was for the annexation process that we planned to do last year. There was some work done, and we just got the invoice this beginning of this year. So the invoice came and there was no PO for it, but it was budgeted and was planned for all the annexation work that was planned to be done last year. The water pollution, the treasurer of the state for the EPA, it is a timing situation with that. Utility billing, that the PO was closed before the actual invoice was received. And the last one for the law firm, that was an outstanding invoice that was cleaning up 2023 that we just received.
So what was the invoice then for utility billing? And then just clarification on the annexation, that was just paperwork when we were talking about annexation, or that is a multiple list of properties that are annexed? Well, there's not a lot that annex, maybe 5-ish?
This was to address the ones that were, the properties that were in fact gonna annex.
So those are completed.
Yes, and the utility billing, it is, again, the PO was created, and then it was closed at the end of the year, and then we received the invoice. So it was prematurely closed to clean up the accounting aspect of things, and then we received the invoice after the PO was closed.
What was the invoice?
The software for utility billing, sorry.
Other questions or comments? Jeremy?
I'll cover the RS&H and the wool part. So the runway with that. So in November, when we had our annual planning meeting with FAA, they told us, hey, originally you had the design of the runway in 24 and then construction in 25. We actually have some funds available. We'll move all that up, but you have to have everything designed, ready to bid, and sent out to bid in March. So we had to move everything up. Well, there's 3 different entities working at 3 different speeds. So with this RS&H is our design consultant. They're our on-call airport consultant. Out of that $141,000 that's within that, the city's only responsible for $7,079 of that. The rest of that is all FAA funds and ODOT funds that will be going with that. You guys can see on the legislation, I have one of the last pieces of that. It's just like I said, FAA, we finally got the grant. As soon as we get the grant documentation, we can appropriate those funds. Well, then the ODOT took a little bit longer because we just got that resolution approved, I think last meeting or the meeting before. So we just got their grant documentation for that. So now I'm appropriating those funds, and then I'll get a purchase order. But with that, it was just we were moving fast, so that way we could acquire those FAA funds for the construction of the runway 725. That project's a roughly $5.5 million project that they're going to fund over $5 million for. So it's just we didn't have a purchase order yet because we didn't have all the money in the pocket or in the in the project at the same time.
And that's separate
Mr. Greeno.
What's that?
That's separate of this 725 ordinance that we have for amended for tonight.
Yeah, so the 725 that we have gone through, that's the remaining funds, the ODOT funds that are going in there.
Thank you.
Mr. Greeno.
Yeah, just for clarification on the WPC, I believe that's for their MPDS permit and also the stormwater MS4 permit, which is an annual fee that is due.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 9, 2024. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to apply for funds through a federal emergency management agency flood mitigation assistance grant for continued flood mitigation efforts within the city of Findlay, Ohio and Hancock County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Palmer.
The deadline for this grant application, that's what, February 22nd? Since that's the case, I move that council's rules be suspended and this resolution be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Ballman. All those in favor of the suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman. Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this resolution its second and third reading.
Resolution 9, 2024. Resolution 9, 2024.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of resolution number 9-2024.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Mayor?
Apologies for the quick timeline. The reason that this is coming to you late is because originally either the county or conservancy district were going to be the entity applying because they've been the lead entities, but because they aren't an NFIB participant and we already have the FEMA system set up, that's why they requested that we be the entity to do the application, and the NFIB participant is a requirement of the grant. So once that was discovered is when they contacted us to take the lead.
Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2024-3, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Greeno.
Yeah, move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-003.
Second, Mr. DeArmond. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman. Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2024-4, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2024-004.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-9, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio to advertise for bids where required and enter into contracts for construction of various projects, appropriating and transferring funds for said capital expenditures, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Jeremy, are we ready to go if this gets passed tonight? I know there's generally an advantage for us to being first out with a lot of projects.
Yeah, there is, because our resurfacing, we actually were able to get that program together. If this money's appropriated, I can have that project out to send out for advertisement tomorrow on that. And then the Hemp Hill. So with that resurfacing done, we're actually moving up a lot of our projects. We set some kind of quick goals with our team, and my team was able to meet those goals. So originally we were going to be in kind of March, but we are ready to bid the resurfacing, and then the Hemp Hill will be here in a couple weeks.
Mr. Russell.
Move the council statutory rules be suspended and this ordinance be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
And Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Rules have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2024-9.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-10 as amended. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to execute a memorandum of agreement with the Maumee Watershed Conservancy District as set forth in the memorandum of agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A, appropriate and transfer funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Palmer.
Jeremy, what are the advantages of approving this tonight?
We have a timeline with ODOT to get this money turned over to them by the 16th. I was going to say 15th.
I move that council's rules be suspended and this ordinance be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Ballman. All those in favor of suspension say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
And Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2024-10 as amended.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-10.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion. Ms. Frishy.
Jeremy, did we get an agreement or anything signed with the county since this is outside the city limits that we're doing this project?
So the city of Findlay, the county is working with the Conservancy
that.
District, and our agreement is with the Conservancy District, and it's an ODOT project. So because we're providing the funds to ODOT, we don't need permission from the county. ODOT has permission to do the work. That's their roadway.
Other questions?
It's
Mr.
not a
Kell.
local let project. It's an ODOT let, so they're managing
it's
it.
not-
They
we're not
designed it.
leading
We're
it.
not
Right.
we're not managing it or building it.
We're the pass-through.
We're just local funds.
If I just may as well, I again appreciate you expediting this. You recall when I initially made the request, I informed you it was going to need to be expedited to meet the state's deadline.
All those in favor of the ordinance say, I'm sorry, Mr. Russell.
It's interesting that this neighborhood has been, had challenges with access. And now kind of coincidentally through the, looking at the flood mitigation, a really pretty easy solution, presents itself that makes access into the neighborhood, much easier. And, I think it's disappointing that some on council wouldn't want to pass this and help serve these citizens and give them better access. I'm glad to see the project happen with or without the dry basin. I think this is an improvement, and I'm glad that the city of Findlay is taking the lead to help serve their that neighborhood, even if the project is being accomplished on non-city land.
Ms. Frishy.
So, Councilman Russell seems to like to make personal attacks, I'll call that. So, just for the record, I voted in favor on appropriations for this project, and I knew either way that it was going to get the rules suspended, and I'm not a person who's in favor of suspending the rules on a regular basis, and I will be supporting it when the time comes to pass it, but do not try to play political games during council.
Thank you. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye. Names called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Ballman,
Aye.
and Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2024-11, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with Civil and Environmental Consultants Incorporated for additional work for environmental review of the downtown recreation area, appropriating funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2024-12, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with the Hancock Regional Planning Commission, hereinafter referred to as HRPC, for the facilitation and preparation of the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program years 2024 and 2025, retroactive to January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2024-13, an ordinance changing the name of Technology Drive in the city of Findlay, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-14, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-15, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
This is a pretty routine transfer of money from one fund to another, the insurance payment for repair of police vehicles. And for that reason, I'd make the motion that ordinance 2024-015 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno. Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-15. Ordinance 2024-15.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-16, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Jeremy.
Just quick note on this, I do not need this tonight, but at the next council meeting, I will be requesting to get the second and third reading. That is, I have to stick with ODOT's schedule on that. I have 30 days from the bid opening to have fully executed contracts. So I don't need it tonight, but I just want to kind of throw that out there for a reminder. Thank you.
First reading for ordinance 2024-17, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2024-18, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids where required and enter into contracts for the replacement of precision approach path indicator, PAPIs, and runway and identifier light reels at the city of Findlay, Ohio Airport for runway 725 NAV-AID rehab, project number 35234500, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Baumann.
Jeremy, Rob, whichever one to maybe take this. I think previous conversations there had been some urgency and to get this done, maybe tonight. If that's still the case, is that still the case, or are you good, or?
Yeah, I mean, you can see for what we just talked about in resolution 08, where we had a purchase order without a purchase order. Both these projects are going to be bid out at the same time due to they're pretty much in the same area, same type of work. So getting those funds into that project sooner so I can get purchase orders and we can keep everything on track would be beneficial. It's not a killer to it, but it would be great so we can get all those purchase orders available.
Mr. Baumann.
With that in mind, I would make a motion that ordinance council's statutory rules be suspended and ordinance number 2024-018 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-18, ordinance 2024-18.
Mr. DeArmond.
Move to approve.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-19. This was a replacement. What? It wasn't amended because it hasn't received a reading. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a grant agreement with Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Division in order to receive funds for the design portion of the rehabilitation of runway 725, rehabilitation AIP 34, project number 35234200 at the city of Findlay Airport, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Jeremy?
This, I guess this was the other project I was talking about, and this is all in 725, so not to push you guys.
Mr. Baumann.
With that in mind, I suppose I would make a motion that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance number 2024-019 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
The suspension of the rules have been approved, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2024-19, ordinance 2024-19.
Mr. Baumann.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2024-019.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mr. DeArmond?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
And Mr. Russell?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2024-20. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids where required and enter into contracts for the construction of the Blanchard Street Waterline Phase 2 OPWC, project number 357400500, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. And first reading for ordinance 2024-21. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to sell city-owned property located at 515 Prospect Street, parcel number 570000921770, by public auction, and declaring an emergency.
Old business. Ms. Frishy.
So at the end of last year, Councilman Ballman so nicely referred to committee my concern with the water rate increase and determining who the authority is to be able to raise water rates. So I just wanted to touch base on a few things, because yesterday there was a water and sewer committee meeting that seemed to go rogue, in my opinion. So the public understands it was referred to committee to determine who the authority is, and passing legislation is what I've been asking for this whole time, since there is no legislation inside the city limits of who can raise water rates. I think it's important that we understand that that meeting did not happen, as is Grant, Councilman Russell, who is chair of that committee, who is usually very diligent in not allowing council members to discuss topics that are not on the agenda. The agenda, for the record, went from water, sewer, storm, long-term control plan, There was no discussion about legislation to figure out who that authority body is going to be, but the discussions seem to focus on spending $1 to $1.5 million to do a study for a long-term plan to have a third party help us determine when we raise water rates and at what percentage. All of these things were completely inappropriate. And I feel it is also important to note that I've been waiting for our water funds to balance out, because during the administration's presentation at the last quarter of the year to raise water rates 50%, they were budgeting $750,000 to be assumed back to the operating budget. Those numbers have come in, and it's $2 million plus dollars, and we are looking at starting our water fund balance for unappropriated for January of 2024, 5.9 million, and that's including with the restricted funds. Without the restricted, we're showing at 4.8 million. Unfortunately, the water department or the water and sewer committee, they don't seem to look at these numbers, and we take everything for face value. And I guess I have a couple questions real quick. Rob, in the meeting yesterday, you said, you know, we do not want to make changes until we have true numbers, but you didn't have true numbers when we made this rush to raise water rates 50%. So I'm just curious, what were the true numbers? Are the numbers now the true numbers, or were the numbers that you were estimating? That question's
Just a
for
second.
Rob.
Mr. Russell.
Well, no, excuse me, point of order. I had the floor and I had a question, and I'm going to have several other questions. So my question was addressed to Rob, and point of order, I had the floor.
Mr. Martin?
So what true numbers are you referencing? What comment are you referencing? Because it was a pretty extensive conversation about, we didn't go backwards and talk about 2023 last night, if I recall. We talked about the discussion moving forward on a comprehensive plan, and even when we talked about this last year when we made the change, the master plan was part of that conversation. And that's what the conversation was about last night.
The conversation for the topic was to determine who the proper body authority should be to raise water rates. I understand that Councilman Russell said at the very beginning of the meeting last year they're not going to rehash those numbers. I wasn't asking for that. I've been asking for the public from the very beginning that we need to have better process, and we needed to determine who the authority is. But during that meeting, you said that because you didn't want to rehash the numbers, that we do not make changes until we have true numbers. However, the true numbers are in now, and they're way off from your PowerPoint presentation. So I'm just asking, how did you get to these numbers and then we ended up these? Because you guys continually also said that you watch the revenue and the projects very closely. You said that several times yesterday, very closely. So how are we off $1.5 million?
It's the timing of when money comes in and out of the accounts for projects and things.
Mr. Russell?
On January 18th, after the first council meeting where the request for the Water and Sewer Committee to meet, I sent Denise an email, and I said the purpose of this meeting is to, quote, determine policies and procedures for instituting utility billing rate changes, end quote. The topic of then the meeting last night, because it was a broad conversation, but we settled on basically three areas of inquiry and in more in-depth analysis. The first one was for each of the utilities, water, stormwater, and wastewater. What the council would, or what the committee would recommend would be the proper authority to make utility rate changes. The second question was what constituted going into making a rate change. Would that be necessitating an outside rate study? Is it something we do internally through pro formas? What information goes into creating a rate change? And there was a lot of conversation into that part of the topic. And the third question that the committee is considering is the frequency of when rate changes should be considered or reviewed or analyzed. And that was how we structured our conversations. We stayed within those topics. The only topics we considered yesterday all fall within the purpose of the meeting being called, which was once again, quote, determine policies and procedures for instituting utility billing rate changes.
Mr. Baumann. Oh, sorry, his hand was up before yours, Ms. Frischie. Ms. Frischie.
I didn't say a word. And Grant, the three things you said at the beginning, but when you start talking long-term control plan, stormwater, sewer, we didn't even have Mr. Beach there to answer questions. And then you talked water. And all of these things, although they are part of making some determinations down the road, you're talking as though that council's going to be the authority, possibly, I don't even know. But when Dan Departmental said, well, I think this is great, we should determine who's going to be the authority. And you said, we're not discussing that right now. And you went into all of these items and then wanting to spend over $1 million when we just raised rates 50% to do a study. None of that was what I have been advocating for the public that Councilman Baumann referred at the end of the year from all of my discussion. It was determining who the authority is and passing an ordinance.
Mr. Stashek.
I'm going to speak in support of Councilwoman Frischie's comments in the sense that I had a conflict yesterday. I had a meeting with regard to our health insurance, which is a serious item. And had your agenda been posted the way Robert's rules would have required you to post it in detail with all topics that would have been followed explicitly one by one, I would have postponed my health insurance meeting to be part of a meeting where you would talk about such serious things as raising rates in water and sewer and spending millions of dollars on studies and things like that. I had no opportunity to do that, and I feel like I was misled, and I think that was unfortunate. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Ms. Frischie, your time limit's about up on this subject, so let's be brief.
We better make sure we're treating everybody the same. So
I treat you the same as anybody else, so let's move on.
So my question, just really quick, the one last question is for the auditor. When we talk about rate increases and determining if we need to raise rates, do you work with the water department to determine if we have enough money coming in for the year to be able to operate our water fund, or do we need to be spending? And we also have an internal program that Jeremy and the administration have been using that seems to have worked. Are we missing a step? I mean, do we not know at the beginning of the year if we're going to have enough revenue to operate?
Mr. Stashek.
Primary function of my office and my job is to be a check and balance to ensure that the revenues are coming in at a rate that you will not spend one penny, let alone $1 beyond the funds that you need and have slotted into the different programs. So yes, that's a primary function of my office. I do monitor that. I make sure the monies are there to pay the bills. If there wasn't going to be enough money to pay the bills, we would reevaluate and take a look at that. You would all know, as well as the administration, I was not consulted at all with regard to the numbers that were coming in or the numbers that were being used for act.
Any other old business? New business? Mr. Wobser.
Calling an appropriations committee meeting for, excuse me, Thursday, February 15th, 4:00 p.m. And the agenda topic will be the sale of 515 Prospect Street property.
Other new business? Mr. Baumann.
Would like to remind those on the Planning and Zoning Committee of our meeting schedule for this Thursday, February 8th at noon, where we have two vacations on the agenda.
Mr. Martin.
Recently, the mayor's office received a letter from the Hancock County Commissioners regarding a 15-unit sanitary sewer system, part of the Hancock County Sewer District. It's the Eastgate subdivision on the east side of town off of State Route 224. It is their system that they maintain, and it dumps into ours, and the residents are billed. They have requested us to take that sanitary over and wanted to have more discussion, and I'm requesting that this topic is referred to Water and Sewer Committee so we can have a more in-depth conversation about this and plans and options to move forward.
The Chair of Water and Sewers, Mr. Russell, right? We take note.
I'm sorry, I think that it may be old business. If it is, I apologize, but at your next meeting, you're going to give a third reading to the $5,000 for finishing some of the work on the environmental, where we know that Mr. Wilson was ready to go to bid on the environmental work for the benching, and it's not ready to go to bid because there are adjustments that need made to his plans, and the public needs to know that. But more importantly, you talked and agreed, and I encouraged you to get a fiduciary. It is my hope that when you do the third reading of that piece of legislation, that there is also another effort and complete effort, whether it be legislation or however you want to do it, in place to finalize acquiring a fiduciary to represent our interests, because there is a lot of wheels spinning on this property with regard to those environmental issues. And when that $5,000 passes, that would be a great time to know what's happening with us being represented as a city by us.
Mayor.
Councilwoman Frisch, you can go
Ms.
first.
Frischi.
I just, since Rob referred something to water and sewer, and we have a couple residents from West Park out here, just want to do a reminder to Grant that West Park was referred for their stormwater, wastewater infrastructure out there to be addressed, to start getting a plan together. And I know they're waiting on a meeting, so I don't know if you want to add it into that or get with them after the meeting to set a date. But I just want to do a reminder.
Other new business? Mayor.
To that point, I will also, Councilwoman, I will forward you the email that we provided to West Park probably a month, I'm losing all track of time, a little while ago, that outlined some of the projects that are already set up to address a number of their concerns, just so you have that. Regarding the fiduciary, I know that's still on my list of things to work on the RFQ. I know we've had a couple of folks are RFP, so that will be done. I don't know if it will be by your next committee meeting, but I know that that is part of our process and part of some of the legislation that was passed or by the committee. One other thing is, I know that folks have asked questions about grants, and obviously there's lots of grants that are coming down from the state and federal government, and just a couple of quick comments. One, the city of Findlay for decades receives grants from the state and federal government. That's a lot of how state and federal funding work, right? They collect money, our taxpayer dollars that are going to the state and federal government. They're creating programs that help target things that are going to benefit different communities, and then we go out and we compete to get them to help better our community. We can all be frustrated by state and federal dollars being collected and talk about our tax dollars and how we may feel about that process, but my position has been, and if any of you have different opinions, I'm happy to discuss it. My position has been that those are our tax dollars that have gone to the state and federal government, and it's my job, our team's job, your job, to try to bring those back to benefit our community as much as possible. And we do review, to make sure that there's not any hidden things in them. And we make sure that they are programs that we believe are going to benefit our community. And so until that those changes are made and grants are no longer permitted, or, you know, available at the state and federal government, it's my responsibility to continue to bring those dollars home and put them to good work for our citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Would it be possible to get a list of city-owned properties and addresses just for our reference?
Yes.
And we could, you know, I mean, spring cleaning could be here. We don't
Mr.
want to be in a real estate business.
Mr. Stashak, you had your hand up first.
You might want to narrow that request down because. Yeah, we did the tax cards on that and pay the water bills, and it's a stack. It's a stack.
That's
Mr.
pretty
Niemeyer.
extensive, Mr. Niemeyer. Do you want the full list, or you want to narrow it down to a specific? As I asked Ms. Frischie earlier.
So we are in the real estate business.
So the thing is, we have all of our pump stations. We have the reservoirs. We have all of our
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Parks.
So we have hundreds of parcels that I can
Parks,
provide
ball
you.
diamonds. You've got, you know, there's quite a few, Mr. Niemeyer. Do you seriously want a copy of all of them, or
No.
Okay.
I think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other new business? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Baumann, motion to adjourn. Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. We are adjourned at 7:40 p.m.